They staggered their positions so no one was obstructed. They also kept some distance from one another as a precaution against area of effect spells. An Elder Lich was a fairly strong enemy. For Platinum rank adventurers, it would still be pretty difficult. A Mithril rank team would have a decent enough chance of winning. For Gringham's team, if they didn't think about how tired they were, they could defeat it. Luckily, he brought along members who were quite strong against undead. That was encouraging. It would have been tough to fight if the Lich had kept some distance. But at this range, he felt they could probably gain the advantage. So this is the Master of the Tomb, Gringham concluded. An Elder Lich was a ruler. They controlled mobs of undead and sometimes had dealings with the living. There were even famous Elder Liches. For example, there was the captain of the ghost ship that sometimes sailed through the fog on the Catsea Plain, or the one ruling an abandoned castle. If this one was an Elder Lich like them, it wouldn't be any surprise if it were the Master of the Tomb. So we hit the jackpot. Super lucky. It's not like the request was to kill the Master of the Tomb, you know. Shall we show it the might of Heavy Masher? Let us show it our divine protection. Everyone chimed in excitedly. They roared to chase off the fear of facing such a powerful enemy. We need defense magic, and just as Gringham was about to shout the plan of attack to his determined teammates, he was assailed by the feeling something was off. He understood the cause immediately. It was the enemy before them, the Elder Lich. What is it? We were not taking it by surprise, are we? Although the party was in full sight, the Elder Lich didn't make a single move. It didn't raise its staff or begin casting a spell. It simply watched them in silence. The workers couldn't contain their confusion. The monster had obliterated their prediction that it would engage them immediately. But now they hesitated to make the first move and attack. Certainly undead were hostile to the living. But it was also true that some of the intelligent ones could negotiate. Usually if a living thing started things, the terms favored the undead. But if the undead proposed a truce, one could sometimes acquire an item made with technology lost long ago. In any case, when facing an enemy as powerful as an Elder Lich, it was best to get through an encounter without fighting. Perhaps it was irritated that its traps hadn't finished them off. Or perhaps it recognized their ability and chose a peaceful path, striking a deal. Thinking that way, it was horribly thoughtless to make the first move and attack. That would mean completely abandoning potential negotiations. But they were in enemy territory. With no secure escape route, they risked a tough battle ahead. The team exchanged glances. They all were thinking the same thing. Speaking on behalf of the team was the leader's job, naturally. Excuse us for intruding. You seem to be the master of this tomb. The Elder Lich turned its awful face to Gringham and pointed a bony finger at him. It meant, shut up. The gesture didn't seem very Elder Lich-like at all, but he wasn't brave, no, suicidal enough to say it to the powerful monster's face. Gringham obediently shut his mouth. Then in the hallway, where silence had fallen once more, he heard that sound again. He strained his ears in spite of himself. It was the familiar sound of something tapping against the floor, but of more than one something. Gringham and his teammates all looked at one another. Upon hearing the sound, they arrived at an inconceivable conclusion. Then they all shrieked at once. Who said this Elder Lich was the master of the tomb? Sorry, it was me. Are you kidding me? This can't be happening. Whoa, 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 there's no way we can win this. Even divine protection has its limits. More Elder Liches appeared from behind the first 6 of them. That meant a total of 7 immensely powerful undead casters. Since they were all one race, their method of attack would be the same. If only they had a way to neutralize all the monsters' attacks, they would be able to defeat all 7 of them. Of course, they didn't have such a way, and they couldn't possibly acquire one. Under those impossible circumstances, Gringham and his team completely lost the will to fight. Now then, shall we begin? As the Elder Lich, who had not the slightest intention of negotiating, spoke, the 7 staves were slowly raised. At the same time, Gringham's scream rang out, retreat. As if they'd been just waiting for him to say the word, everyone ran as fast as they could. They raced in the opposite direction of the Elder Liches. Of course, they didn't have the presence of mind to consider what might be at the end of the hallway. They just wanted to survive the excessive power of the mob of Elder Liches a little longer. The thief was at the front of the line. Then came Gringham, the wizard, the priest, and the warrior. The workers ran. They ran with no misgivings. they turned a corner. Normally, they would be on the lookout for monsters or traps, but with footsteps coming after them, they didn't have time to make cautious observations. They left their fates to chance and raced on. Stone doors lined both sides of the hallway, but when they imagined the possibility of dead ends, they lacked the courage to open one. The clanking of the workers in metal armor echoed off the walls as they ran. The noise could have given away their position to other monsters. But they didn't have the presence of mind to cast silence. They ran and ran and ran. They pumped their legs in a frenzy. They turned random corners and got lost after sprinting down each hallway. They no longer had any idea where they were. They would have liked to get back to the entrance, but they didn't have the wherewithal. Are they still behind us? Gringham shouted as they ran. The warrior bringing up the rear answered, yeah, they were running after us. Damn it, don't run, use fly. If they flew over here, the next thing that would fly at us would be spells, you idiot. Let us hole up in one of these little rooms and try to negotiate, the wizard shouted, gasping for air. He was the weakest of the group and seemed about ready to collapse. This is bad, thought Gringham. Physically, he won't last much longer. Undead monsters like elder liches didn't get tired. If Gringham and his men kept getting chased, they would slowly be killed off as they ran out of energy. Why are there so many elder liches? Common sense said this situation couldn't be. The master of this tomb must be stronger than an elder lich, right? That was the only answer that made sense. But did such an undead even exist? Gringham didn't know. Damn it, this tomb, the wheezing warrior at the end of the line screamed. As if on cue, a crest appeared glowing in the floor. It was big enough to capture all of Gringham and his teammates inside. What? Someone's voice, like a scream, rang out. This floating sensation was different from the fall earlier. Gringham's field of vision was enveloped in pitch black. He could hear things crunching and snapping underfoot, and sensed his body slowly sinking. It felt like he'd been thrown into a swamp. He panicked for a split second before realizing it didn't seem terribly deep. He sank to about his hips but no farther. In the darkness, which was very quiet, he asked in the timid voice of a boy who'd lost sight of his parents, is anybody there? Over here, Gringham. The voice of the thief gave an immediate answer, and it wasn't too far away. He was probably about as far away as he had been while they were running. Is anyone else around? There was no reply. He'd expected as much. If there wasn't a light, it meant his wizard and warrior weren't around. He just had to count himself lucky the thief was there. Seems like it's just us. Thou art Chiayure right. He scanned their surroundings without taking a single step. The deep darkness went on forever. A fear welled up inside him. He couldn't tell where the darkness stopped and his body started. There's no sign of anything moving, but should we turn on a light? Guess we have to. It was unfortunate, but despite countless worries, moving would break the silence. Maybe it would trigger a trap. Their human eyes couldn't penetrate the darkness. They needed a light no matter what. Okay, just a sec. Gringham sensed some rummaging around from the direction of the thief. Then a light appeared. The first thing he saw was the thief holding up the fluorescent stick. Next, innumerable gleams and reflections of the light appeared. It reminded him of the treasure they'd seen in the mausoleum, but something was different. Gringham frantically bit back the scream that welled up deep in his throat. The thief's face also seemed to cramp up. The countless reflections and sparkles were bugs, cockroaches, that completely buried the area. The smallest were the size of the tip of his pinky finger, but the largest were over 3 feet long. Layers upon layers of cockroaches covered everything. The crunching sensation beneath his feet came from trampled cockroaches. Considering the bugs were piled up to his hips, he didn't want to imagine how many of them there must have been. The room was so large the light didn't reach its walls. Considering the range of a fluorescent stick was around 15 yards, they got an idea of how big the room was. When they looked up at the ceiling, a great many cockroaches reflected the light. Where are we? The thief gasped, murmuring the question. Gringham understood how he felt. He thought the bugs might start to move if he raised his voice. What the hell happened? As the thief scanned the area, Gringham recalled the scene before they found themselves in this darkness. He remembered the magic circle that had appeared on the floor. He asked, probably a pitfall? No, it can't be that. I think we were hit by some magic, a teleportation trap. Or did the elder liches cast something? Teleportation spells were normal. For instance, there was the Tier 3 escape spell, Dimensional Move, but that only teleported the user. To teleport someone else and more than one person, there is some tier 6 spell that can teleport multiple people, I think, right? Ah yeah, I think you're right. But could there really be someone who can use it? Gringham didn't even know of that many casters who could use tier 5. But it still made sense to him. He could see how there would be multiple Elder Liches here. If such an absolute power existed, it would probably have no problem dominating them and ordering them around. It hit Gringham what a dangerous place this tomb was, and he shuddered. He also felt hostility toward the Count, the one who requested their services. Of course, it was Gringham and his team who had taken the job. They understood the risks and bet the chips of their lives. If someone had said he was just blaming his problems on the Count, there wouldn't have been any way to argue. But the Count should have been informed to some degree. If he hadn't been, he wouldn't have made the request to survey the tomb, offered such a large reward, gathered together so many workers and sent them there. So he was sitting on some information. Shit, let us hurry up and get out of here. These ruins should have been left untouched. Yeah, sounds good. I'll go out in front, Gringham, follow me. It seemed like the thief hadn't realized yet none of the cockroaches were moving. That was probably for the best. Gringham flicked his eyes over all the cockroaches before him. From the way their feelers were moving slightly, he could tell they weren't dead, but they didn't budge. An uncanny feeling he couldn't place took root in his mind. No, I doubt you can escape. Suddenly, a third voice sounded. Who's there? Gringham and the thief scanned the area in a panic, but couldn't sense anything moving. Oh, how rude of me. I am the Prince of Fear, the one who was granted this realm by Lord Aints. Pleased to make your acquaintance. When they looked in the direction the voice came from, something strange appeared in their line of sight. Something was shoving the cockroaches aside, trying to get out from beneath them. They weren't at a range where they could use close proximity weapons. The thief silently drew his bow. Gringham moved to get out his sling, but stopped. He thought if it came to it, he would wade through the cockroaches and cut the thing. Before long, the creature pushing through the other cockroaches emerged, and it was yet another cockroach. But it had an elegance that set it apart from its surrounding brethren. This cockroach was nearly a foot tall and stood upright on 2 legs. It wore a brilliant red cape gorgeously bordered in gold thread, and a golden crown sparkled on its head. In its forelegs, it carried a scepter with a pure white jewel at the tip. The strangest thing of all was that despite standing upright, its head was still pointed at Gringham and the thief. If a normal insect stood upright, its head would, of course, point up. But this odd being before them was different. Besides that, there wasn't anything else in particular to separate it from the other cockroaches. But that one difference was plenty. The worker pair exchanged glances and decided that Gringham would be in charge of negotiations. The thief still had an arrow nocked. Once Gringham made sure it was pointed down, he addressed the Prince of Fear. Who are you? It seems you weren't paying attention just now. Shall I introduce myself again? No, I don't mean like that. Having gotten that far, Gringham realized that wasn't what he needed to be asking. I'll be blunt. Want to make a deal? Oh ho, a deal. I am grateful to you both, so I am not adverse to the idea. The mystery contained in those words, what was he grateful for, gave Gringham pause, but he wasn't in a position to ask. We would like to be let out of this room unharmed. I see, that's only natural. But even if you got out of this room, we are currently on the 2nd level of the Great Tomb of Nazareth. I must advise you, it would be extremely difficult to return to the surface. The 2nd level, Gringham's eyes widened at the words. Am I right in thinking that the area through the door at a slight descent from the mausoleum on the surface is level 1? Isn't that the usual way to count them? Well, yeah, but I just wanted to confirm. Ha ha. Well, you were teleported from level 1, so it makes sense that you were a little turned around. With the cockroach before him somehow nodding its head, Gringham felt a freezing chill, like he'd been stabbed with an icicle. It was fear due to his earlier conversation with the thief being affirmed. It meant that somehow who knew, someone had used teleportation magic like a trap. What kind of spell, what sort of technique? He wasn't a caster, but even he knew that was an incredible feat. It would be great if you would also tell us how to get out of the tomb, but we aren't hoping for that much. Letting us out of this room is fine. In return, we'll give you what you want. I see the Prince of Fear nodded emphatically and appeared to be thinking things over. A short time passed in the quiet room. Soon enough, the Prince of Fear seemed to have made up his mind and spoke. I already have what I want. Anything you are capable of offering is insufficient. Gringham was about to speak, but the prince held up his forelegs to silence him and continued. But before we get to that, you seem to be wondering why I am grateful to you, so I will satisfy that curiosity now. My kin are sick and tired of cannibalism. Thus, you two are delectable morsels, and I thank you. The moment he comprehended the words, the thief loosed his arrow. It flew through the air, got caught in the prince's cape, and fell impotently. Then the room began to squirm. With myriad rustling noises, the princess kin formed something gigantic, and there was a tsunami, a dark torrent. It is a terrible shame that there are only two of you, but please try to fill the stomachs of my kin. The massive, swollen wave engulfed Gringham and the thief. It was exactly like they'd been hit by a tidal wave. As he was swallowed up by the black maelstrom, Gringham frantically batted at the cockroaches coming in through the gaps in his armor. A weapon wouldn't work against a mass of tiny insects. Gringham didn't have any area of effect attacks. It was faster to just swat them with his hands. For that reason, he'd already thrown away his weapon and had no idea where it had gone. He tried to flail his arms, but it was difficult to move now that he was completely covered in bugs. The scene was like a drowning man's floundering. The only sound he could hear was the scrabbling of countless cockroaches. It was impossible to make out the voice of his teammate, the thief, over the din. But of course, he couldn't hear the thief's voice. The thief was in no condition to speak. Cockroaches were crawling into his mouth, down his throat, and even into his stomach. Gringham felt prickling pains here and there. The cockroaches that had invaded through the cracks in his armor were gnawing at him. He tried to scream, but cockroaches plugged up his mouth. Frantically spat them out, but others forced their way through the slight part in his lips. His mouth crawled with them. Perhaps small ones had entered his ears. The rustling grew awfully loud and he started to itch. Innumerable cockroaches squirmed on his face, biting into him. He felt pain in his eyelids, but he couldn't open his eyes. He easily guessed what would happen if he did. Gringham already understood what would become of him, that at this rate, he would be eaten alive by cockroaches. I can stand this, he screamed, and the bugs poured in. They tried to wriggle down his throat. Then he felt something slip down and drop into his stomach. The sensation of a live cockroach running amok in his belly made him sick. He struggled for all he was worth. He didn't want to die like this. He had wanted to show up his older brothers. That was the driving force that had gotten him here. He'd already saved enough money to live comfortably without adventuring anymore. And with his reputation, he could wed the kind of beautiful girl one would never meet in a village. Whether he had power or wealth, he should have already surpassed his brothers. He had won at life, so he didn't want to meet his end like this. Agblog og, I am getting out of here alive, he screamed, spitting out chewed-up cockroaches. You really hanging on, aren't you? Well, let us have seconds. A few moments later, even his screams were swallowed up by the black maelstrom. The man's eyes snapped open. His field of vision contained a ceiling. It was made of stone, and something giving off white light was embedded in it. He couldn't understand why he was there. When he tried to look around, he realized he couldn't move his head. No, not only his head. His wrists, ankles, hips, and chest had been tied to something. He was essentially immobilized. The incomprehensible situation frightened him. He wanted to scream, but something fitted to his mouth prevented him from closing it or speaking. As he was desperately rolling his eyes around, trying to take in the area, he heard a voice. Oh. You awake? A deep, rough voice asked. He couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. A horrifying monster moved into his field of vision. It had a human body, but its head resembled a warped octopus. 6 tentacles hung down to around its thighs, wriggling. The thing's skin tone was the muddled white of a drowning victim. Just like a drowning victim, its body was bloated. Instead of clothes, it was bound in a few black leather belts. They pressed into its flesh like the string used to tie a roast. The resulting sight was awful. If a beautiful woman had been wearing them, she would have been alluring, but this terrible monster was sickening. It had 4 thin, webbed fingers per hand. Its nails were long, but they were all gorgeously manicured with strange art. That weird creature turned its pale, murky, pupil-less eyes on the man. Ooh-hoo-hoo, did you sleep all right, honey? He just panted. Shock and horror combined to make his breath rough. A hand caressed his cheek with the kindness a mother would use to calm a frightened child. It felt horribly cold and clammy. Shudders went through his entire body. It would have been perfect if it had smelled like blood and rot. Instead, it carried the pleasant scent of flowers. That only terrified him further. Oh, you don't have to be scared to the point of shrinking like that. The monster was eyeing his crotch. He only now realized, from the feeling of the air on his skin, that he was naked. Perhaps I should ask your name, honey. A thin finger poked into the area that seemed to be the monster's cheek. It cocked its head. If a pretty girl had done it, it would have been nice to see. But this was an octopus-headed, drowned-body monster. All he felt was hatred and fear. The monster smiled at him as his eyes darted around. Its mouth was completely concealed by its tentacles. Its expression had hardly changed. He knew it had smiled because its cold, glass-like eyes had narrowed. "Ooh, hoo, 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 so you don't want to say?"